Hey, good morning, class. It's time to begin. One thing that you'll note about this class is that it is listed as a blended class. And I'm going to take a few minutes to explain exactly what that means. And it sort of came about during the pandemic, but it has advantages, I think, even under normal circumstances or relatively normal circumstances. The idea is like this. You can view the lectures in this class one of three different ways. All right. It's suggested that you use at least one of them. All right. One thing you can do is you can show up here Mondays at 9 a.m. Right. BU 103. You can show up Mondays and view the lecture live and in person. All right. We also have a lab following the class across the hall in BU 102, and you can come and work on your lab assignments live in person. But I know people have responsibilities to take care of, and circumstances may prevent them from coming in at any particular time. So you may also watch the video of the class while it's going on. That's called synchronously. Okay, so we actually have one person, if you notice in the bottom of the screen, that's watching this from someplace else. Okay, so you can watch it while it's going on, and the advantage of that is that you can ask questions while it's going on. All right. The third way that you can watch the lecture is by watching a recording of the lecture. All right. In Canvas, there's a module for each week. And sometime later today, probably, by afternoon, the video recording of this lecture will be posted to Canvas. And actually it will be posted to YouTube, and a link will be available in Canvas. So you could go and watch it that way. And of course, if you have questions or difficulties, you can email me the questions that you have. All right? So 3 ways that you can watch it. In person, synchronously while it goes on, or asynchronously at any time that you want to. You can watch the video recording, and you can mix and match. You don't have to say, well, I'm going to come to class, or I'm going to watch it synchronously, or you can mix and match. So like if next Monday, for example, you weren't feeling well, stay home and watch it, or sleep in and watch it when you feel a little bit better later in the afternoon or whatever. All right. So I think that's a good way to try to accommodate the different needs of people in this class. Right? Yes.
So I'm using my GI Bill, and I have a requirement to have one in-person class. If I was to stay home and watch the lecture live, would that affect that at all? Would I be judged like differently on a
that is a good question. From my perspective, no. That might be better to ask your advisor about how this affects the GI Bill as related to having an in-person class.
I live an hour away, so it'd be a lot easier.
Yeah, right.
So
yeah, I would check with your advisor, because they probably would have more insight into that than I would. All right. The other thing about this class is this class only meets in person for once a week. All right. So we have a lecture on Monday. We do not have a lecture on Wednesday, and we do not have a lab on Wednesday. There will be supplementary material posted to Canvas for the additional material to pad out the week. In addition, if you have questions or problems or whatever, I can meet with you individually, either through WebEx or through Zoom or through some other means. All right. So don't feel like you're on your own for the rest of the week. Call me up, or not call me up, but email me questions that you have. And the best way to email me is through Canvas. All right, because I see those right away, as opposed to some of the other emails that, I don't see quite as readily. Right, don't see quite as often. Let's put it that way. Okay. So blended class, watch it 3 ways. in-class session only on Mondays, not on Wednesdays. And online material and meeting with me online if you have any additional problems. Is there any questions over any of that? Okay. Normally in class, I'm going to go in, I go in and what's difficult about this class is taking attendance because I don't know if you're going to watch the video later or not. So I typically will not take attendance in this class. But the one thing I want to do is I want to introduce you to the way the class is set up in Canvas. Syllabus, of course, is here. Please take the time to read the syllabus. I used to, for, God, I don't know how many, 20 years, I used to go over the syllabus in class. And it's like, why bother doing that? You can read it, all right? So take the time and read it on your own. Each week, there is going to be a module. There's this Getting Started module that contains a lot of the information that I covered already. And each week we'll have a module, and it will have in it to do this week, which is a list of things for you to do. Some additional materials for you to review. Again, consider those to be the second lecture that we do not meet in person for, but there's online materials for these things. And an assignment of what's due the following week. Assignments are going to be due the week after it's assigned. So for example, this assignment for week 1 is due on August 31st. So it will be due not this coming Wednesday, but a week from this coming Wednesday. So if I make an assignment this week, it's going to be due the following Wednesday. All right. I will probably try to get a little ahead on posting. I don't like to get too far ahead to make sure I've covered everything in class, but for those of you that want to work ahead, I'll probably post a couple weeks ahead. If you're ever stuck waiting for me, all right, to post something and you're all caught up or whatever, drop me an email and I'll try to make sure the next week's worth of materials is available. The module is where the video will appear. So this is the video from last semester, and it'll be replaced by the video that's going on right now. And then here's your lab, a description of what you have to do. Research the following topics, create a web page that has an article about each of the topics, summarizing what you've learned. Each section should contain at least one well-written paragraph. Use the tags covered in chapter 1 in the book. I feel that the book is a good addition to my lectures or vice versa. I don't necessarily cover things precisely exactly the same as the book. It's like both of them taken together are two ways of assisting you in your learning. So I think the lecture with the book and the book with the lecture is better than one of them just by themselves. All right. Let's get into the heart of the matter now. Let's get into creating web pages. If we look at web pages, we look at a web page. Let's pick, go to Google, and let's do a search for wow. If I can't think of something, they have suggestions for me.
Bigfoot.
Where is Bigfoot here? Or is that your?
I was just.
That's a great suggestion. Look for Bigfoot.
There's probably some crazy conspiracy websites out there with Bigfoot stuff.
There's bound to be. Why do so many people want to believe in Bigfoot? Because Bigfoot believes in them. That's why. All right, let's take a look at this page. All right. If you look at it, there's different kinds of things on this page. All right. We can point to what those things are. We have a heading. You could call this a headline, or we could call this a heading. Right? we have a plain old paragraph of data. So on. We have a video. We have another video. We have an image. And if we look, this guy's name is a link. All right. So we have a bunch of different things that appear on a web page. That's the whole beauty of web pages, right? They're not just words. It's not like when you go to a web page, you just get like a paper written out, all right, a document written out. The beauty of web pages is that you can have a variety of different content on them, and that content could be linked. So for example, if I wanted to see more about Ben, I could click on this link and go to a page that talks about all the articles that Ben wrote. If I thought this was a well-written article, I could find out more information about him. Or I can go to different sections of the Smithsonian Magazine, and so on. Now, we can actually peek at the code, all right? And that's a nice thing, and that's a thing that most people overlook unless you're a web developer. But you can actually view the source of the code. I right mouse. This is within Chrome. You can do it in other browsers, I'm sure, probably a similar way. But I can right mouse and say view page source. And I can see the actual code. We get down to the actual body of the web page right here. Body of the web page. IMG represents an image. A represents a link. Button represents a button, and so on down the line. You can find other things as well. UL represents an unordered list. LI represents a list item, and so on down the line. This is how we convey to the web browser exactly what the different stuff on the page means. So I'm going to create an HTML page, and I'm just going to put in some text right at the beginning. I'm not going to format it at all with tags. And then we're going to go back in and we're going to put tags in. Tags are these little things. They start with a less than sign, they have the name of the tag, and they end with the greater than tag. So I'm going to go into, and it doesn't matter what program you choose. You can choose Notepad if you're on Windows. You can choose Notepad++, which is a free program you can download, which is available on most of the machines on campus. You can download something from Microsoft called Visual Studio Code, which is something I typically use. All right, but it doesn't matter because you're going to create just a plain text file. All right, and you're going to indicate through the text file what the different sections or parts of the page mean. Is this a headline? Is this just plain text? And so on. So I'm going to go into, to start with the most basic, go into Notepad. And I'm going to put, welcome to fall semester. Fall semester at Lorain County Community College begins on August 22nd, 2000. Professor Mike Zellers that's me, by the way, I didn't introduce myself, said he was glad that he woke up in time to make his 9 a.m. class. And after a summer of not getting up to an alarm, I set multiple alarms to make sure that I would be here in time. Right? On my phone and on my regular clock alarm, all right, to make sure, all right? Now, that's some basic information. I'm going to save it as a web page, all right? So if I'm in Notepad++, and this applies to other programs as well, if I go to say I want to save it, I don't want to save it as the type .txt. .txt is a plain old text file. It's not HTML, all right? And I want to save it as a .html file. So I will change this from text document to all files, and I will change and I will save it as first.html. All right? And I'm going to save it on the desktop. So now, notice that the icon is a little Google Chrome icon, which means if I double click on it, it's going to open it up in Google Chrome. Now, when I double click on it, there's a spoiler. It's not going to look very good. All right, and we'll see why it's not going to look very good in a second here. I double click it, and all I see is that text all mashed together. All right, all I see is that text mashed together. All right, and the reason it's mashed together is because I did not use any tags. All right, now what we're going to do to fix that is we're going to insert tags into our code. Think of tags as like highlights. You have a book, let's say. If this was, let's pretend this was my textbook. And if I'm reading it and something on this page is important and the instructor says it's going to be on the test, you might go and highlight that section that's going to be on the test. You marked up your book. You literally marked up your book, all right, to give extra meaning to the text that's here. You said, hey, this isn't an ordinary paragraph. This is an important paragraph. I need to know it for the test. Now, the opposite holds too, all right? If the instructor says, well, this paragraph here, that's out-of-date information. I don't need, you don't need to worry about that. It's not going to be included on the test. You might put a big old X through it, indicating, hey, that's not important. I don't need to study that, all right? We're going to mark up our text not by drawing X's through it or highlighting it, but by using these things called tags, all right? So, there's some basic tags that are going to appear on every page. Notice, by the way, that this is the same file as this. We're just looking at it two different ways. When we're looking at it in Notepad, we're sort of seeing the insides of it. When we look at it in Internet Explorer, we're seeing how the browser views it. You know, this is almost like the difference between a photograph and an X-ray, right? If you take a photograph of someone and you take an X-ray of someone, it's still the same person, all right? But you're seeing a different aspect of that person. Here you're seeing the code. You're seeing the results of the code, but it's still the same file. Now, there's a few tags that go on every single web page, and I'm going to start off by putting them in now. And I'll talk a little bit about it, then we'll get into the tags that are specific to this content. First thing actually is not a tag. It's called Doctype Declaration. Simply tells the web browser that they're dealing with HTML. With that type of HTML, simply tells the browser, hey, this is not a JPEG. This is not a XML file, all right? right, which is another way that data is communicated on the web. This is an HTML document. All right. We then have an HTML tag that delineates the beginning and end of the web page. So in our case, everything between this document and this this tag and this tag is the web page itself. Now, let's look at this tag. Look at these tags, because tags typically come in pairs. There's a start tag and there's an end tag. Okay. Now, start tags are the less than sign, followed by the name of the tag, followed by the greater than sign. The end tag looks at the same way, except there's a slash before the name of the tag. So these two tags are paired up. And what this is telling us is that everything from here to here is part of that HTML document. Okay, that's cool. Let's look at a couple other tags. There's a head tag. And there's a body tag. That differentiates between the two main sections of the page. The head is information about the page. The body is the actual content of the page. We can put a number of things in the head, but for now we're just going to put a title. And this title is going to be first example. Because that's what it is. So everything between the start title and the end title is the title. So let's save this. It's not going to look much different yet, but we're getting there. Notice way up here it says first example. Where did it get that from? It got that from the fact that we put in the head section a title. Now, when I was imagining this, I was imagining the page to look something like this. Let me go into Word and mock up what I imagine the web page to look like. I imagined welcome to fall semester to be a very big font. I imagine the first paragraph to be small. And then the second paragraph underneath it. So that's sort of what I imagined it to do. And we're not there yet, right? Because everything is just in one line. Because we haven't gone into the body yet and specified what these individual pieces of data, what these individual pieces of content mean. So that's what we're going to do now. All right. Welcome to fall semester is sort of like the headline of this web page. It's what the web page is about. All right. You could call it a headline, or you could call it a header, or rather, I'm sorry, you could call it a headline, or you could call it a heading. Header means something else, unfortunately. We'll talk about that, probably not this time, but maybe next time. All right. Headings can be designated by the H1 tag, the top heading, is designated by the H1 tag. All right. So I have an H1. Welcome to fall semester. What's that going to tell the browser to do? It's going to tell the browser to take everything between the start tag and the end tag and make it a bigger font. So if I save this right now and refresh, welcome to fall semester is now on its own line. I forgot to mention that. And it's a bigger font than the normal text. All right. I'm going to make the text bigger here so that we can see. How did it know to quit with the word semester and not include this other stuff? Because that's where the ending tag is. What if we forget the ending tag? What do you think is going to happen?
It's going to be heading 1.
All of it's going to be heading 1 because we told it where it started, but we never said where it ends. Here's the thing about HTML. Have any of you done programming like in C# or JavaScript or anything like that? For those of you that have, if you get an error in one of those languages, your program just doesn't run. All right? Like if you forgot a semicolon in one language or another, your program just won't run. Web pages aren't like that. If you omit a tag, if you don't follow the rules of HTML, the browser is going to guess at what it thought you meant by it. And sometimes it might guess right, and sometimes it might guess wrong. So therefore, it benefits you to follow the rules of HTML and put in the starting and ending tags for everything. Now, what about these? Okay, I put the ending tag back in. Let me put the paragraph tag back in for this. And let me put the paragraph tag in for this. Saving it, I'm coming to the browser and I'm hitting refresh. So I have what I set out to do. I have the heading, that's the big on the top. I have one paragraph and another paragraph. And notice that the browser is smart enough to wrap it around if it doesn't fit on the screen. So like if it can fit the paragraph in on one line, it will, but if it can't, it will figure out how to wrap it around to make it fit. This is such an important concept. It's the main concept of HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's a language we're using. HTML is a language that you use to define content of web pages. We're going to study 3 languages in this course. HTML is the first one, and we'll study it throughout the course. The other important one that we're going to study is CSS, or Cascading Style Sheets. We'll probably start studying that in a week or 2. And that deals with the appearance of the page. Because like if you look at this web page, you know, it's not very colorful, right? It just has the words, is black text on a white background. We could make this page look any way we want it to. We could give it a different color background. We could make the text a different color. We could make the text a different font, and so on. All that is not controlled in HTML. That is controlled in a language called CSS. All right, so HTML for content, CSS for appearance. The third language we get into just in the last week or so, couple weeks maybe of the class, and that's called JavaScript. And that deals with interactivity on a web page. So the two main ones we're going to study are HTML and CSS. The third one is JavaScript. So markup language, markup is another way of saying we use tags, right? You talk about what's the markup to make a heading. What that's asking is what are the tags that you use to make the heading? So markup language means that this language uses tags. Hypertext means that this is more than just plain old text. All right. Remember the Bigfoot web page that I showed? It had text, it had images, it had videos, it had links, and probably some other stuff too. All right. So therefore, it's more than just plain old text. It's hypertext. Means like more than or beyond. All right, so it's beyond text. Now, one thing you might notice in this example with the code is here I put the tag and the starting tag all on the same line. And I did the same with title. Whereas here, the starting tag's on one line, the ending tag's on another line. Likewise with the paragraph or the body. The spacing out of the tags on your web page doesn't really matter. In other words, I could put all these on the same line. All right, and the browser will treat it no differently. Page looks identical. All right, even though we're on the same line. Now, why might you do what I did originally, have them spaced out on different lines instead of having everything all on one line? Yes?
Spot a mistake.
Exactly. It's easier for you to view everything and to spot a mistake. So I'm going to make a mistake that happens usually once or twice a semester to someone in the class. I'm going to forget my ending title tag. All right. If I forget my ending title tag, look what happens. The whole page disappears. Oh, that's not good. And if we look, we can see snippets of our HTML code in here. What that's telling us is that I started the title tag, but I didn't close it. Now we know what the problem is, so it's easy for us to spot. But compare how easy it is to spot this way than if we had things separated out on their own line. It sort of jumps out at you this way, that you don't have the end title tag. Whereas if everything was just one long line of text, it would be a little harder to find. All right. And that's just a very simple example. All right. When things get more complicated, then it becomes even harder to spot things out if they're not spaced properly. So therefore, I indent things to show what is called nesting. Nesting is an important concept with tags. Nesting simply means that a tag is inside another tag. All right. So in this case, the head is nested inside the HTML tag because it's defined inside of the HTML tag. And by inside, I mean between the start and ending tag. The rule of nesting is like this. If a tag starts inside another tag, it should end inside another tag. So for example, this is not correct. Does everyone see why that's not correct? Title starts inside of head, but it ends outside of head. It ends after the end head tag. Now here's what's good, I guess, about HTML. This is a mistake. I broke the rules of HTML. All right. However, the browser is smart enough to know what I mean. All right. You don't get that in other programming languages where it's going to take a guess at what you mean. Now, why do we worry about the rules at all if that's the case? Well, because following the rules helps make sure that your thing works across different browsers. Chrome is just one way that you can view your web page. You can view it via Firefox. If you have a Mac, you can view it in Safari. You can view it under Microsoft Edge, Opera browser, your mobile browser, and so on down the line. So we're just looking at it working in one particular browser. It's possible, now I don't think it would be the case, but it's possible if you viewed this page that broke the rule, all right, on a different browser, that you wouldn't get proper results. So following the rules is a good way to help guarantee that your web page is going to work correctly on many different kinds of browsers and not just one. And that's an important task for anyone that creates a web page. All right. And I'll tell you, this is my first chance this semester to tell you things are a lot better now than they were in the good old days. All right. Because when I was a young web developer, there were all kinds of browser compatibility issues. Back then it was Netscape versus Internet Explorer. And you could write a page that worked in Internet Explorer that didn't work in Netscape or vice versa. That problem is not as big of a deal as it was back then, currently. All right. But still, you want to follow the rules. Now, in this case, what do you think is going to happen if I put the H1 there and H1 there? It's breaking the rules, first of all. Go ahead.
It would just be, that paragraph would be included in the header.
Not the whole paragraph, though.
Well, part of it, where the H1 ends, wherever the closing tag is.
We got the end title tag. I told you it happened at least once a semester. Who thought it was going to be me that made them? And again, what happens here? Well, we define the start of the title, but we never said where the end of the title is. Therefore, the browser doesn't know where to cut off the title. All right. Interesting here. It sort of created two H1s out of that. Because of the paragraph tag here, it put this H1 on its own line. The result is pretty much what we thought, maybe just slightly different.
I'd be assuming we thought we forgot a closing paragraph tag and that's why I did that, or?
Exactly. Who knows what it is? It saw the paragraph tag, knows the paragraph start on a new line, And we hadn't closed the H1 yet, so it assumed that the paragraph was part of the H1, and therefore it makes everything bigger until this, but it creates these as two paragraphs. Now, I've been doing the case where the tag is missing or the tag is in the wrong place. It can also be if you mistyped on the tag. Like if you typed H2 here instead of H1. What do you think is going to happen there? Thoughts? Yeah.
Maybe the HTML will correct itself, but maybe it'll stay the same.
That would be one possibility. The one thing to keep in mind is sort of all bets are off. You break the rules, you're going to get what it decides for you to get. All right. What do you think?
It might change it to the different size to header 2 for the rest of that.
Okay. Another possibility. What's really going to happen, though, is it's going to happen the same thing as if we just omitted the end H1 tag, because it doesn't know about that. I stand corrected. Well, see, you learn something new every day. I thought it would act as though there was no end H1 tag, but it didn't. That's weird. Nice thing is there's actually a program you can use. It's sort of like grammar check or spell check for your web pages. And I'll talk about this more throughout the semester, but let's look at it now. It's called the HTML Validator. W3, by the way, is the organization that makes up these languages. So I can paste my code there. And it'll tell me if I follow the rules or not. Consider adding, it gave me one warning. It said to include a language attribute. So I might as well do that. We haven't talked about attributes. Attributes are additional things that you can put about a tag. So now if I do this, you'll see there's no errors or warnings. So it passed the spell check. Now my web page could be nonsense, right? I mean, it could have links that don't work. It could have images that are not correct, you know. But I followed the rules of grammar. Just like you could write a paper in Word that makes no sense, but as long as you follow the grammar and spelled everything right, spell check's going to tell you it's okay. All right, that's the same idea here. So we're going to do our best to indent to show the nesting of these tags. Now, there's an H1. Are there other H's too? Yes, there are. There's up to 6 of them. Now, keep in mind that when I use H2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that doesn't mean that H2 is the second header and H3 is the third header. It's the level of the header, all right? In other words, the level of the header on the outline. So let's change this around a little bit. I'll put another top level heading about me. So there's two top level headings. Paragraph here, paragraph here. And I'm going to put an H2 underneath it. That says my Monday schedule. Now notice these are sort of subtopics underneath the bigger topic of Professor Zeller's. So this is one topic. This is another topic. This is a subtopic though underneath Professor Zeller's, just as this is a subtopic underneath Professor Zeller's. So let's view this. You should be able to see that these H2s are a little bit smaller than the H1s. Now, when we get into CSS, we'll be able to do more with these headings. We'll be able to do more with everything. For example, we could make the second heading a different color to make it stand out even more. All right. So we could maybe make the top level heading be in red and the second level heading to be in gray, something like that, to make it stand out a little bit more. One more thing I want to talk about before we finish for today, and that is the use of what's called white space. White space are things like tabs, enters, spaces. If I put that in my code and save it, when I view the web page, it makes no difference. Now, at first, that's frustrating because you think like, well, how do I line things up? You have to be a little bit patient. We'll learn how to line things up with CSS. But it's actually nice because if you notice here, in this paragraph, I can format this paragraph however I want to in the code itself. I could make it one long line, or I could put it on 3 different lines for readability, or do whatever I want to with it. And the browser will still display it as a paragraph. So notice that even though there's an enter after the word county, that's not shown in the actual HTML document. All right, here's what I'd like you to do in lab. Labs are optional, by the way, if you haven't sort of figured that out from the way the class is structured. I would like you to try to create a web page similar to this, all right? That is, create it with the basic tags that I put in, the HTML, the head, the body, the doc type, headings, paragraphs, and experiment, all right? I said there were H1 through H6. Well, what does an H6 look like? What does an H3 look like? And so on. Your assignment is to create a page similar to what I've created today, but doing it for the topics that I've supplied to you. So another thing you could do in lab is research those topics, find out some information about what HTML is, what CSS is, what JavaScript is, and start taking notes so that you can create that web page. Are there any questions at this point? Yes.
You build this in Mac? build this in Mac?
Yeah, you wouldn't use WordPad, but you can use another program to do it. All right, and if you have difficulty with that, let me know.
Well, I'll be in the lab, but because I have a class after this.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, are there any other questions? Yes.
Send this, right after this.
Not right after, it takes, it takes me time to download it, it takes me time to upload it. So, usually, unless I get a lot of questions in lab, usually I do it in lab. But you can pretty well assume by like the afternoon, it will be uploaded sometime. Yes.
Said that we can work ahead, right? So can we complete assignments and stuff before the lecture is posted?
Sure. Sure, with a catch. The only catch is that for some of the assignments, you're to do things a certain way. And sometimes there's good ways and there's bad ways to do things. So the lecture will discuss like the good way to do things. So, but if you want to take a stab at them, that's fine. But just know that, you might work ahead and do something that works, but isn't like the optimal way to do it. And I might ask you to redo that. There's one thing I'm big on, by the way, in this class and in all my classes is giving you the opportunity to rework assignments. That's how it would be on a job, right? If you didn't get it right, if your job was to make a web page and didn't get it right, that wouldn't be the end of it, right? You'd have to fix it, right? So same thing in this class. Other questions? Okay, we'll see you over in lab.